Title: The Global Debt Sustainability Map, 2025, a comparative assessment of 31 economies. Section 1, Executive Summary. Across 31 major economies surveyed in 2025, only 9 countries meet the mathematical condition required to stabilize or reduce their debt burdens. The remaining 22 economies, including most of the G7, China, and key emerging markets, now operate on fiscally unsustainable paths where interest costs exceed economic growth and primary balances fall short of what the arithmetic demands. This analysis uses the debt sustainability simple equation, stated verbally as primary balance must be greater than or equal to the interest growth differential multiplied by the debt to GDP ratio. It evaluates fiscal health with a precision immune to political narratives or financial storytelling. The results show a world bifurcating into structural surplus states, borderline stabilizers, and fiscal distress cases, with profound implications for global markets, interest rates, debt rollover risks, and geopolitical stability. The verdict is clear. The post-2008, post-1971 assumption that advanced economies can indefinitely refinance and grow their way out of debt has ended. The math now runs against most governments, and bond markets, after years of suppression, are beginning to reassert discipline. Section 2 Introduction: Why this equation matters. Now, the debt sustainability equation is not an opinion or a model. It is an accounting identity. It states that a country stabilizes its debt to GDP ratio only if its primary balance is greater than or equal to the interest growth differential multiplied by its debt to GDP ratio. In this equation, R represents the average interest rate on government debt. G represents nominal GDP growth. Primary balance is defined as revenue minus non-interest spending. For most of the past 20 years, this equation remained dormant because the interest rate was artificially suppressed below the growth rate thanks to zero rates, quantitative easing, and global liquidity overhangs. But from 2022 through 2024, the regime changed. High inflation raised interest costs, growth slowed in advanced economies, and central banks lifted policy rates to multi-decade highs. Suddenly, the interest growth differential turned positive in country after country. This single flip from negative to positive means the world has entered a phase where debt compounds faster than economies expand unless governments run structural primary surpluses. Few do. Most cannot. The United Kingdom's 2022 LDI crisis was the first modern example of bond markets revolting. Japan's 2024 to 2025 yield curve control exit pressure, the U.S. long bond sell-off, and widening spreads in Europe and emerging markets were not accidents. They were symptoms of a global fiscal model colliding with arithmetic reality. Section 3, Methodology. This analysis applies one unified formula across all 31 countries. Required primary balance equals the interest growth differential multiplied by the debt to GDP ratio. All values are taken or derived from the IMF World Economic Outlook, the IMF Fiscal Monitor, national budget offices, central bank rate and debt structure reports, and the World Bank's international debt statistics. The purpose is not to forecast, but to audit. We do not assume future reforms, future crises, or future monetary shifts. We simply ask, are countries today running a primary balance consistent with stable debt? This makes the results incomparable in clarity to legacy measures like fiscal deficit ratios, which often hide the true dynamics. Section 4, Global Results at a Glance. The first chart maps all 31 countries against the required versus actual primary balance. The findings are: Category 1, True Sustainable States, 9 nations: Japan, Norway, the United Arab Emirates, Denmark, Switzerland, India, Argentina, Kenya, and Iran. Category 2, Borderline Stabilizers, 2 nations: Mexico and Switzerland, which carry mild risk but remain stable. Category 3, Unsustainable or Distressed, 20 nations: the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, Canada, Brazil, Turkey, Egypt, Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, China, Russia, and many more. The key pattern is that most of the advanced world fails. Most of the developing world fails. Only a handful succeed, either through exceptionally strong institutions, exceptionally high growth, resource windfalls, or inflation-driven stabilization. This is the first time since the 1980s that the global map looks this lopsided. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 5. The Debt Sustainability Heat Map. The second chart introduces the gap metric. Gap is defined as actual primary balance minus required primary balance. Interpreted verbally, positive means safe, reflecting a surplus or a sufficiently small deficit. Zero means borderline. Negative means unsustainable. Deep negative means fiscal distress. The heat map reveals a continent-by-continent pattern of fragility. In Europe, France, Italy, and the UK all fail, and Germany barely fails. In North America, both the US and Canada fail. In South America, Argentina is the surprise green, the rest are in red. In Africa, only Kenya passes. Egypt, Ghana, and Nigeria are deep red. In the Middle East, the UAE is ultra-safe. Iran passes through inflation-driven dynamics. Turkey is distressed. In Asia, India is safe. China is unsustainable. This heat map is the most honest fiscal map of 2025 available anywhere. Section 6, Group by Group Analysis. Subsection A, G7 and Advanced Economies. A stunning result emerges. Japan is the only sustainable G7 member. The United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, and Canada all confront the same trio of problems. The interest growth differential has turned positive, structural primary deficits persist, and aging populations suppress growth while raising spending. Germany and the UK are mild failures. France and Italy are severe. Subsection B, the Nordic outliers. Norway, Denmark, and Switzerland demonstrate that fiscal rules, institutional trust, and countercyclical buffers are more important than size or resources. These nations survive because they choose discipline every year, not because of luck. Subsection C, emerging markets. The story is mixed. India stabilizes through high growth. Argentina stabilizes through inflation and austerity. Mexico is balanced on a razor's edge. Turkey, South Africa, and Brazil slide deeper into unsustainability. Subsection D, resource economies. The UAE and Norway use their windfalls wisely. Saudi Arabia does not. Iran is stable only because inflation obliterates real debt costs. Oil is not enough. Management matters. Subsection E, Africa and Latin America. These regions face high interest burdens, low growth, and shrinking fiscal space. Ghana and Egypt are in outright distress. Kenya stands out as a structural reform success. Section 7, the 9 Sustainable Economies Group 1, true structural surplus states. Norway, the UAE, Denmark, and Switzerland. These are characterized by rules, buffers, and institutional coherence. Group 2, growth advantage states. India and Kenya. Here, growth outpaces interest and compensates for imperfections. Group 3, inflation stabilized states. Argentina and Iran. In these cases, nominal growth is so high it suppresses effective interest. Group 4, a unique hyperdebt exception. Japan. Japan maintains stability because, over long horizons, its interest rate remains well below its growth rate despite its giant debt stock. Section 8, the 22 failing states. Countries in this group share at least one of the following characteristics: a positive interest growth differential, large primary deficits, aging-driven spending cycles, weak institutions, or high external borrowing costs. This group includes the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, Canada, Brazil, Turkey, Egypt, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, China, and Russia. The common thread is that they are running fiscal policies incompatible with their macro environment. Section 9. What this means for the next decade. We are heading into an era defined by higher structural interest rates, slower growth in the developed world, shrinking fiscal space, political conflict over deficits, spending, and social contracts, increased sovereign default risk in emerging markets, and bond markets enforcing discipline. The 2020s and 2030s will be a transition from the idea that debt does not matter to the recognition that debt is the central constraint. Section 10. Policy lessons and forward guidance. The countries that pass the test share 5 traits: credible fiscal rules, high institutional trust, countercyclical buffers, export competitiveness or resource discipline, and growth strategies aligned with demographics. Countries that fail will need tax reform, entitlement restructuring, pro-growth strategies, controlled inflation, or financial repression. There are no more free lunches. Section 11, Conclusion: The World After the Illusion. The math is final. Most governments are not on sustainable fiscal paths, not because of politics or ideology, but because interest has overtaken growth and the primary balances do not match reality. The debt sustainability equation is the one place where the emperor cannot hide. And in 2025, the global fiscal illusion is cracking. The world has entered a new era where arithmetic reclaims power from storytelling.